All right, real excited to have this next gentleman on the Sports Card Shop guest line. He hails from Texas, and a few words that describe this guy to me is dedicated, persevering, and loyalty. And I'm sure there's a lot more words I could use, but those are the first three that come to mind, and we're going to learn why. But I don't want to make him wait too long. Papa Jim Caruthers, welcome.
Hey, thanks, John. I appreciate you having me on.
Well, your chronicle, and I'll have you give out all that info at the end with Instagram and social medias. Your dad played some baseball, managed as well, and you really wanted to learn more about his career, and you really dug deep, and you started to discover all sorts of interesting things. I guess my first question, your dad was John Carruthers. I want to make sure I say his name
Yes, sir.
there. Um, what was it? Obviously being your dad, and we all right. Most of us want to know about our family, our moms, our dads, and that sort of thing as much as we can. But more than that, what made you really deep dive this in the fashion that you have?
Well, first off, John, I appreciate you having me on and taking the time. This probably wouldn't be happening without giving a shout out to my wife and Boss Wife Authentication, and she's been the drive kind of behind this in a way. Um, my dad passed away growing up. I knew that he had played baseball and kind of semi-pro ball, but Dad really didn't talk about it. There were times that we'd be playing catch or I would be playing ball and he, teaching me things and stuff like that growing up. And, I'd ask him, he changed the subject or go a different way with it, and stuff like that. I didn't push the issue with him. I knew where that line was growing up and was not going to push the issue. So just let it go. And then when he came down with Alzheimer's and passed away in 2016. And some people say that's a blessing and a curse, but to me it was more of a blessing because I heard a lot of stories that I didn't know about him growing up, because the mind goes back to that time period. Well, after he passed away, my stepsister was going through some things a few years later, and there was this box that he had his TV sitting on, and they moved the box and they opened it up. And what was down in there was about 6 different scrapbooks that were put together. And so they'd be going through it, and they immediately called me and said, "You won't believe what we found. You need to come down here and take a look at this." So from where I'm living in Dallas to Waco, Texas, about 3-4 hours. So I drove down there, looked at all this stuff, and they gave it to me, and it was overwhelming. It was scrapbooks from back when he was like in high school, all the way through his collegiate career and semi-pro career, that not only his mother had put together, but also my mom had put together after they got married and were living together and traveling and doing this. And it was overwhelming and kind of blew me away looking at all this and thinking, man, the time, every little scrap of paper. My grandmother had newspapers from wherever he was staying at the time, whether it was Fort Worth or Dallas or down in Alpine or out at Salt Lake, wherever it was. I find articles and all from that. So it's overwhelming, but it was something that I thought, hey, I need to dive into this and see if what little stories that I know, putting these pieces of the puzzle together.
Why do you think, while he was with us, why do you think he was reluctant to talk about his baseball career?
As I was going through this over the last couple of years, I've had that question in the back of my mind, and I think that I found the answer to it. There was a time when he was playing in Reidsville for the Reidsville Phillies, 1955. He got there after the season had already started a couple of months. And around the 12th or so of August, his name got pulled with about 14 or 15 others in the list for the Army out of Tarrant County in Fort Worth. And I think that probably put a little bit of a hindrance on him in a way. Then I found out, okay, he served his 2 years in Louisiana in the Army. When he gets out, you've got to think of the time period when he was growing up in the 50s, when you've got, it's right after World War II and all that. And he's grown up seeing these guys, baseball that he's been emulating and looking up to, that go into World War II and then come back out and go back into the pros, go back into the majors, and they're playing. So I'm thinking in the back of his mind, he's thinking, when I get out of the Army, hey, I've still got this. I'm only 24. I can get back into this and get back and play pro. And I think there was a meeting of the minds, probably with him, my mother, at the time, my older brother, who's 13 years older than me, was little, and then my mom being an only child. And so I believe my grandfather probably had a little bit of a pull and a little bit of a stake in this also, that this is his first grandson. And I think it basically came down to, you need to make a choice. You're either going to do baseball by yourself, or you're going to move here where we are with your wife and your son. And I think that was the battle that was going on right there. And he made the choice. He just hung up his cleats, so to speak, and all on it. That's the only way that I know. Speculation. None of my older siblings, no one else in the family that I've spoken with knows the reason.
Yeah, and he chose family. There's something worthy in there. He served his country. Thank him. Thank you to him posthumously. So, but I mean, so he didn't. But he didn't. Growing up, he didn't mention his playing career too much.
No, sir, not at all. When I was growing up, there were different, I guess, things that that he would kind of say to me, or this or that, or every once in a while he would mention, a player or something. If we were watching a game, or if we would go to a game or something like that, he would talk a little bit about that. Even when he came down with his Alzheimer's, I tried thinking about, okay, maybe he'll bring up some of that in the past. And he never did. He would bring up further when he was younger, as a younger child. It was like he blocked out those baseball years from 51 to like 59. He just blocked them out, and they weren't there, at all. And it's tough, because as I go through this stuff, John, it's just every day there's another question. As I have time to go through this, and I'm going through and piecing it together, there's just more and more questions, about it. But there's a lot more answers too that I've been able to find out in a lot of different places that he played that I was not aware of, and nobody.
And we're going to cover some of that ground too. Do you think he felt a little guilty of his playing career, even though he was a pretty good ball player? You think there was a little, ultimately, because he hung up the cleats to raise his family and be with his spouse, you think there was sort of like, hey, my family's more important, so I'm not even going to talk about this stage in my life? You think there was, I know,
Right.
I don't know if you can speak for him, but you think there was a little bit of that
Yes, sir. I think there was. And I think maybe with my older sibling, my older brother, he may have tried to, I don't know, really push him as much to get into baseball, really, as he did kind of working more with me and all, doing it, knowing that, hey, he's the last child. Maybe I can get him, into it and going and all that and all. But yeah, there's got to be a lot of heartache and a lot of hurt there, especially now that I'm finding out, as I dig into this deeper, and I'm finding out about players that he may have known or came across or talked to, who knows, and all that eventually made it into the majors. And then he's sitting there thinking about that's, I mean, it's got to hurt in a way, in a little bit. because that was his life. I mean, he grew up, that was his life. That was, he loved playing it, and he played year round. I mean, he played summer ball in high school and through college too, when the season was over. So
I'm sure, like most people, right? We're humans, right? There are a lot of what ifs. What
right.
if I would have kept going, or what if I would have went down this avenue and that sort of that. It's just human nature. And maybe by not talking about it, again, I'm playing amateur psychologist here,
Yeah.
but maybe by not talking about it, he doesn't dwell on it or think about it. It's just he turns the page and doesn't
Turns
go
the
back.
page and
Doesn't go back.
Mhm.
Even though he has a fondness for it's a sport he loves. It, like you said, there's some heartache that maybe he wanted to go further, but just couldn't do it. And so, rather than talk about and kind of reopen an old wound, you just
Wounds.
kind of
Yeah.
not do it.
Yeah. Yep.
So you get this call that some stuff's found. Kind of take it from there. What did you find? What was the first thing that made you say, "Hey, there's more to this story, and I'm about to uncover it"?
There were a lot of type 1 photos from like when he played SMU, mainly college photos. He was so good in sports. I remember and there's some stories that he did share with the step family that I got and all. And one of them was that they needed the basketball when he was playing baseball. The basketball team needed somebody that was just fast, and he was one of the fastest ones. And so he actually played basketball and baseball both. But the basketball coach would argue that, hey, you can't have him, until our season's over. And the baseball coach was like, no, I need John out here now. No, you can't have him. We still have 3 or 4 more games and all that. And he was good at it, and listening to that story and seeing the pictures, and then thinking back to when we put the basketball goal up and we're out there playing horse. And he's spotting me HORS, John. He's already spotting me 4 letters. I'll take HORS, we'll play. I said, oh man, all I got to do is just, you just got to miss one and I'll win. He said, yeah. And then you play that and you're the one losing because he's doing all these little fancy shots and the Kareem, how Kareem Abdul-Jabbar would do the over the head like that.
Yeah, the skyhook.
He would do, the little skyhook. He'd do that left-handed or right-handed. Different things. So it's when I came across some of this stuff in the pictures and looking, then it reverted me back to my childhood and growing up with him and the outside time that we had together and all, and thinking, wow, he was this good, he's this good now. What was he like even back then, and all. But I remember him talking about when he was at SMU, there were a couple of guys there. He said they were just natural talents. He said they were just born with it. He said, you can tell. He said, I could tell that you've got some people that are just normal athletes. They don't have to work that hard. He said, I had to work. I had to put in the time and the effort to get to where I was going. And that was, the very few times that he would ever talk or discuss anything like that and all. But the pictures were great. And then, like I said, then coming across all the different newspaper articles. Some of them were taped in there, some are glued, so there's no way of getting them out. And then even the ones that were taped, as I opened the pages, they just fell, being from the 50s, they just fall off the page. So trying to get that organized by dates and just seeing it's just man, it's mind-boggling. This is going to take me. I'm still working on it for sure. It's going to take me a little while longer.
Yeah, this book is still being written, as they say.
Yes,
this scrapbook, who had possession of it?
They were, like I said, they were in the house. The steps. I mean, my when my dad remarried, he had married a lady down in Waco, good Christian lady, and they'd been married for 20 years. So for 20 years, he had these scrapbooks, and nobody else in that family knew about them. Nobody else in my family knew about them. The only people that did were probably my mom and him that were living at the time, and all. And I guess it's like he just kept them, and this was a part of my past that I loved, and this, I'm just going to keep it right here. I'm not going to open it or anything, but it's right here.
So he more or less kept it to himself. He
He
didn't
kept it to
really
himself. Nobody knew about
say,
it because he
"Hey,
had his little
Jim,
TV
check
sitting
this
on.
out.
Yeah,
Want to see your dad?"
yeah. He had his TV sitting on that box, and nobody knew what was in that box. They just thought the box was empty until they opened it up, and it was like, "Oh my gosh, look at this!" You know, and all, because he really didn't share that much with them on his baseball either. They knew that he had played, and had looked up, Google searched and done all of that, but he didn't discuss. She was telling me your dad didn't discuss any baseball with us either. So
Wow, that's crazy to me. But I like I said,
yeah,
like I kind of get it a little bit
a little
as
bit.
well too. So you get this. Where's the first place you start? Is it SMU? Is it high school?
It was
Where do you
it
start?
was it was SMU because I knew more about him playing there at SMU. 1953, they were the co-champs with University of Texas as far as Southwest Conference. Uh, right before the tournament and everything, he was the number one batter as far as a percentage. He was batting 447 in the Southwest Conference and all. So they did some guy did a caricature of him and all, and had it in the newspaper and all. And I did a post on it on my Instagram, when on that day, it was a few months back and all. And I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, what's it like to open up the newspaper and see your son in a caricature there, and he's leading the whole conference in batting average, 447, and it's just like, wow, to see that. And also I started there, and I knew that he had gone from SMU down to Alpine to play with the Alpine Cowboys. Then he had gone out to Salt Lake City, and then he ended up going to Reidsville Phillies. So those were really the four dots that I had on the map that I knew of. And so when you go to opening this and go to looking through here, yeah, you're finding those, but then you're coming across things like, hold it, Dad got a degree. We knew he got a scholarship at SMU, but he never finished because he left after his sophomore in his junior year, and all because he had already signed a contract. So it's like, hold it, he got a degree from Sul Ross State College. This is dated 1955, and it's like, well, now the dates aren't adding up, and all. So it's just like putting. What I ended up doing was I ended up getting my yellow legal pad, and I just put a year at the top of the page, and I went 51, 52. I went all the way to 55 and set them out. And as I come across something, I just write it down on that year. And that's the only way that I could come up with a way of chronologically at least putting these in years first. Then once you get everything in the year, then you go back and put the dates in order: January, March, November, whatever happened at that time. That's the only way that I could come across a way of putting this together to figure out, okay, where are they traveling to? Where are they headed to? And all, because it was him at first, and then all of a sudden Mom's in the picture, and it was him and Mom going to these places and doing this. So, it's and that's I'm still doing it that way.
I gotta ask you. I don't know your profession. You got a little private detective gene in you.
I love history. I've researched our history back on Ancestry and all too. So I love digging into that, and at least getting maybe not the stories, but at least tracing me back, tracing the ancestry back. And I know a lot more about my mom's family and all because I grew up in that town. The family's been there for a little over 100 years in a small town in Northeast Texas. So I know more about them. But when I got those scrapbooks, it's like, okay, now I know enough about Mom's side. Now I've got to dig into Dad's side, plus this baseball stuff, and let's see where this leads, and all. And it's fun. It really is. And I'm just I appreciate you and anybody else that's I guess even interested in hearing about this, because but then on the flip side of it, John, I've got to look at it and say, well, if I'd come across somebody, I'd probably want to hear this story or kind of follow them to kind of find out, hey, what's the next thing you're going to, come across, and I'll just to see what's posted next, I guess. And I'll too, just to, see if it's somebody big or something big that they come across,
Well, what I take from it too is, a father and son love. I'm a dad, right? We want to know, a dad wants to know everything going on in the son's life. And I like to think it works the other way around as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Some families maybe more than others, but right, you care about the history of your lineage. And I think even more so, I don't want to speak for you, you're right here, but the fact that your dad almost felt like he couldn't talk about it. You're sort of speaking for him now, and kind of writing the book that it was written, but you're putting all the pieces together,
Yes,
and telling the story that maybe he was reluctant to. I don't know if ashamed is maybe a little bit of that, but at least reluctant to discuss for all sorts of reasons, family, and that's where that whole loyalty, dedication, perseverance, and I mean, how much time? Not that, just out of curiosity. I mean, if you add it up, lawyers like to add up hours and then bill their clients, right? You don't get to bill anyone other than yourself.
Yeah, if I had to charge the family for this, then, right?
How many hours have you probably spent, honestly, like in researching your dad's?
God.
I don't even want to say just playing career, but everything pertaining to your dad, like his college and everything.
It's got to be several weeks, probably at least. Yeah, several weeks, because it's a lot to pull out and to put on the bar in the kitchen area and spread this stuff out and all, and then it's like, okay, I've got to do one section at a time. So each book is basically kind of where he played, or each two books maybe, or where he played, and so it's like, okay, I'll take these two and I'll get my notes, and then what have I not gone through, and I'm looking for any kind of stats, definitely any kind of pictures. I mean, I found 2 or 3 pictures from Salt Lake City when he played there, that newspaper, photographer, I mean, original newspaper pictures, and it's just a joy to find these things and find out a little bit more, about him, and just I've got little notes that I'm trying to find out just specific little details about different things. And it's going to take me a while, but it's worth it. I spend what time that I can on it. Again, shout out to Boss Wife, because she's behind this all the way. I mean, I'm serious, John. Look at this behind me. I mean, this is, I just redid this over the weekend, and she came in and was like, "Oh man, that's cool." And I'm like, "Yeah, I've got it in progression." Starting from, let me get my finger right, starting from his high school here. And then what I'm doing is I'm finding these felt pennants from the different places where he played. And so I'm separating them. That was high school. This is SMU. And then I'm needing one from Alpine. And then it just goes across the top and down and all. So just to be able to put this up and display it, I mean, I love that woman to death for allowing you to do, because a lot of women or friends or spouses, or however you want to categorize it, they don't know, this isn't going up. This isn't, we're going to have our regular pictures and this and that and all. And it's like, no, this is your office room. You do it how you want and all. And so it's a blessing and a joy to be able to display and look at this. And then as I come across things, put something up there.
Yeah, and that's awesome that she's supportive, and I have a supportive wife. It makes all the difference.
It makes a difference in researching and looking at this, and then find something, and she's just as excited as I am when I come across something.
Yeah, no doubt. And I'm kind of the fast forward. You found some interesting stuff out. Someone's lucky to know or play with one famous person. Your dad checks that box.
Wow.
a couple times. So I'm gonna, I'll have you talk about it, but I'll mention some of the guys. Played with Dallas Green. We know him today as a former manager in the big leagues, but obviously he was a player. We don't know him more as a baseball player, but we knew him as an owner of the Kansas City Chiefs in Lamar Hunt, in the Hunt
Yeah.
family.
Yes.
Lamar Hunt. And your dad also managed a Major League Baseball player, whose name will sound familiar to a lot of people, in Norm Cash. And that's just three of the things you discovered. Kind of talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. Going through his SMU book.
Oh, I got to cut you off. I forgot somebody. And famous Colts, and I believe he's a Hall of Famer, NFL Hall of Famer.
Yes.
Raymond Berry as well. So I
Yeah.
don't want to leave anybody up.
Raymond Berry and Forrest Gregg. And also, he even though both of them played football at SMU, they were good friends of my dad. In fact, Forrest Gregg grew up in my hometown and went to school with my mom back in '33 in Sulphur Springs, Texas. And so went there and then go to college, and they were just good. They just ended up good friends. They would go and watch some of the baseball games, and then later on, when they had moved and my brother was probably 6-7 years old, he told me the story about they would come to the house, quite a few times during the year, and they just sit out there and chit chat, and he'd go get them beer and all. And, I just, not knowing something, it's one of those stories that luckily gets passed down, that's written down now and stays, in the family, one of those things and all. Oh gosh. And then finding out, when I found out too that he, in between his time at Salt Lake City and Reidsville, he went back to Alpine to finish up his degree and all. And I found the newspaper article showing him in a jacket. And so I'm like, okay, he's got to be a coach or something. He's in the dugout with the rest of them and all. And so in doing the research, sure enough, he was coach there. And so with that and his degree, then I'm kind of putting the pieces of the puzzle together and all. And so I go online looking on eBay. I find a actual annual from that year and talk to the guy and shoot him the picture. And he's like, yeah, man, that picture's in here. So gave me a good deal on the book. I get it. I open it up and I'm looking, and, Norm Cash, I automatically knew him just from baseball and didn't even know that he had signed a contract to play for the Chicago Bears, actually play football first, and then decided, no, I'm going to do baseball. And to know that Dad was there coaching him in, 55, and then 3 years later, he's in the majors. That's, and when I found that out, it's like, okay, Dad, what, it's kind of like I want to have him here. It's kind of like, okay, Dad, what were you thinking at that time? Because now you're through Reidsville, you're out of the Army, you've done your 2 years, and now all of a sudden you're maybe watching baseball or getting a newspaper or something, and you see this name, knowing him and knowing that you coached him. How does that affect a person that had to make that decision, that had to decide baseball or family and all? How do you, it's just, there's so many questions, John, just so many that, and all, but, it's one of those things when Dad made a decision, it was a decision, and, hey, we keep going, we keep moving forward.
Well, he's a man of dedication as well, right? Maybe he was reluctant, but when he made that decision, he stuck to it and dedicated to his family and turned in that page.
Yeah.
And
going from there, just knowing Norm Cash, well, now it's like, okay, now I've got to take time to check the rest of the players that were there. Just like I did when I knew he was at Reidsville. Well, I've already checked those guys off, and there were 6 of them that he played with that ended up going into the majors, at least for a year. Dallas Green was the one that went in and stayed and all. And we know his story for the 1980. But see, that's the other. Had I known this stuff back then, John, I'd have probably saved up money or bought a ticket or something to try and get to some of these games just to go see. 1980, I'm a freshman, in high school. And it's just like, wow, this guy you played with just managed the world. He's World Series champ now. And I didn't know that.
Yeah,
And
that's
it,
incredible.
yeah, and it's like some of these things I could have gone and either gone to or known about, just like Forrest Gregg and him coaching the Cincinnati Bengals in the, I believe it was the AFC Championship game, and then going to the Super Bowl, with the Bengals. They ended up losing, but still knowing that my mom went to school. I mean, I knew he was from my hometown, but I had no idea mom had gone to school with him and all. And dad had known him at SMU. I mean, I could have gone to the game probably and no doubt been able to walk up to him and congratulate him, just, him knowing who I was associate, who I'm a child of type thing and all. And it's stuff like that you look back and you miss and all, simply because stories weren't told. Things weren't shared. I guess whether you think it's braggadocious or not, it's not the thing. It's the sharing of the stories.
Yeah, no doubt. And I gotta ask you, I'm hearing all this, and a lot of this stuff I knew, so I'm learning some other stuff as well. Has a thought crossed your mind about maybe a book, writing a book?
It has. Uh, Believe it or not, I've got a title on the. Let me grab this real quick if I've got it here. Yeah, here's the letters. This is a 3-ring binder. This is about 3 to 4 months of letters, one-way letters from my dad to my mom, and all during the time that he was playing ball at SMU, the last at SMU, and then mainly down in Alpine, and then a little bit, when he was going to Salt Lake. And I actually put on here on the front, from Polytechnic, which was this high school, to Pinstripes, which the Phillies wore pinstripes. My dad's baseball jersey. I mean, I just put that on a sticky note and threw it in here and thought, man, this is, I'd love to, once I got this together, to try and get it in some kind of a book form or something, that way. I don't know if it ever worked, but I'm
No, no. Listen,
love to have.
I think people love that stuff. The human element, the family element, the perseverance on your part to find out all this stuff, and then it's one thing to find it all out, Papa Jim, but then to put it together in chronological order, and the work and the attention to detail that goes along with that. Um, there's something to be said about that, and I think it's a book. We've seen books like this do very well, and with different stories, but along these kind of lines where
Wow. Okay.
a kid finds out more about their parents or grandparents,
Mm-hmm.
and tells their story in book form. So I'm not
Yeah.
telling you what to do, but it's
Oh, I'd
definitely
love to,
something
because
I would look at.
yeah, I'd love to, because you've got handwritten letters. I mean, one way to mom, and I know they had to be the same way coming back, but it was talking about how his day went, how he did batting, that they won. They're going up to Kansas to play, in this big tournament, or we're out in El Paso playing in one, and all. And it's just, it's a little bit of a timeline there for a few months and all that, you can't, it's more detail. You can't get that in any kind of stories. It's right here, handwritten and all, and just, cool to have. That's one of those things. I mean, you hear people talking about, okay, if your house catches fire, what are you grabbing? That book I'm grabbing.
Well, those letters are, in a sense, Papa Jim, the chapters of that potential book, right?
Yeah.
Little did he know it probably at the time. He's just writing a letter to the woman he loved, but in a way that was the book. It was just in a different
Yeah.
form
Yeah.
At the time. And so I think it's something you have to think about. I think would be obviously a great tribute to the man himself, and while he didn't get to pursue that career ultimately, maybe the book is sort of the fitting, end to that
Yeah.
story,
Yeah. Tribute
that
to him
story.
and all on that. Yeah. Tribute to him and all. So it's, yeah, that would be, that would definitely be amazing.
Well, I appreciate you sharing that. Let's talk a little bit about cards. You're in the Texas area. I'm assuming you go to the Dallas card. I know I've seen you post about it. That's kind of your home show. I know you go a lot. Talk about this other thing you're doing. If your hands weren't full enough with with your dad, talk about this other more hobby based project, if you will.
Well, yeah, because a lot of people ask me, what do you collect, or are you into cards and this and that, and it goes back to me and Dad again. 1976, we get up on Sunday morning and we go to Ramada Inn for breakfast. There was a lady there that just happened to have some cards in her hand. What they were getting was Sunbeam bread was what they were getting there for toast. So she comes out with these little cards. They're 1976, they're helmet cards, and they're perforated on the top where you can bend the top of it back to just display the helmet and all. And they were 70, so there was a set of them. And I remember getting some of those and all. But I grew up in the country, dairy farm, all that. Cards were the furthest thing away. So I really wasn't into it that much. At all. I had other things going on and all at the time, but that was kind of my first intro into it. In fact, I found a set at the Dallas show and have it framed up here, those cards. So that's kind of a good memory of Dad and I, as far as, that way. Then I came across I guess what it was. Yeah, it was a 1985 Sporting News magazine that I came across that had Bo Jackson on there. Well, he won't sign that bat and pads, picture he's famous for. Well, this was pre that. This was while he was still at Auburn, and he's got his shoulder pads on. He's got a bat out from it, and so I got him to sign that. I was showing a few guys at the Dallas card show, and one of them said, they made a card off of that picture. I'm like, no, I didn't know that. So I find the card, and so when I put the card with that magazine and looked at it, it's like something clicked. I thought, hey, this is cool. Why don't I see if I can't find, let's see if I can find Dallas Green. Okay, I've got his rookie card, or I just go looking. And so I'm finding, what I'm doing is I'm kind of doing like finding the picture, the 8x10 photo, and then find the card that was made off of that. But I like vintage. I like the older, where, hey, this is the one and this is the one. There's not 1,800, of these different cards and stuff like that.
You're preaching to the choir.
And so that's what I started doing. I started, kind of putting them together of either players that Dad may have played with or ones he had talked about, Pee Wee Reese or something. I've got one of the, him. I just finished finding the one of the guy that he coached and all, and just different ones like that. So I kind of use that as something for me to do there at the Dallas card show. I'm looking for these vintage cards to go with those pictures and all. Now I get them raw. I don't need them graded, because the easy way for me to display them is just put them in a top loader, like what I've got over here. Just the 8x10 top loader of the picture, and then put the card in there, and that way it matches up and all. So it's pretty neat. I enjoy it, and I keep it within my budget too on that.
Yeah, no doubt. And you're connecting the dots to your dad. Again, it's an extension of his life, his story. Yeah.
It's
people involved in his life, and you're keeping those memories alive, even for those players that maybe people don't always remember, right? And, I think that's important.
And the 8x10s, I mean, they're just copies that I find on eBay for $5-10, something like that. But what I'm doing also, John, just for reference purposes or whatever, because my wife loves this stuff and loves that I'm involved in it, but she has no clue on this as far as, what the value and stuff like that. So on the back of these photos, when I get them, or the cards, I just put a sticky note and stick it inside that thing. Hey, this is how much I got for the photo. This is how much I got for the card. In case something happens to me, she can take these off the wall and go, okay, I've got a starting point here. She's got a few people within the hobby that she could call and say, hey, something's happened. I need to sell this stuff. Can you help me out? and all that. So,
Well,
something else
let's
just
make
to
that
think.
later than sooner. So
Yeah, definitely. But just something to think about, because, you just never know. And so it's good to have, I've thought about that and thought about others that have, a whole lot more as far as a collection and value than I do. And just, hope that they've got everything set up and set right, and all that. Their ducks in a row, so to speak, and all that. But no, it's fun. It gives me something, a little bit different to do and search. And it's a lot of fun to be able to try and, okay, was there a photo off of this card, or what is this, and trying to match them up, you know.
well, it's a testament to your commitment, Jim. You know that you've steadfast. You've done all this research, this work, going to the shows and adding to this. We talk about PC, right? Personal collections. I
Right.
think this is really, in a way, the ultimate personal collection, right? Because of that,
Right.
those lines, those common threads between those guys and your dad during his younger days, and you can't put a price. Whatever's written on the back doesn't matter, because you really can't put a price on that sort of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know.
And just the excitement of being able to find one, because, the Norm Cash, the only card that I was able to find, it was a 1969 Milton Bradley. Didn't even know. And that's the other thing with the research, and I'm also learning about some of this stuff that other people probably already knew about, but I had no idea there was a game. And then there's, close to 300 cards made of this, and all. I'm just like, wow, this is crazy. All I want is just this one little card. But when you go looking on eBay for that one card, you come across all this other stuff, and it's mind blowing sometimes.
Yeah, then sometimes you have variations. It can go all
That's why I
different
stick
ways.
with vintage. That's why I figure, hey, vintage is pretty safe. They didn't make a lot of them back then in the 50s, you know.
Well, you're smart. You're a smart man in many ways. I think that right there too. Well, Jim, I appreciate you sharing those stories. Anything else, before I'll have you give out where people can find you, but anything else you want to share or kind of wrap up with?
One of the things, going back to the Dallas Card Show and going there, one of the things that I enjoy to do, and it goes back to Boss Wife and starting this thing, but it's something that I kind of think is pretty cool, and it's my 101 hobby wall. And so when I go to the shows, I usually get pictures of some of the dealers or the flippers or the super collectors or whoever and all that, and print out an 8x10 and get them to sign it. And I put it on my wall. And then she even came out with the authentication sticker and all that too for it. So
I
it's
saw
pretty
that.
cool.
That's
Yeah,
cool.
pretty
That's cool.
cool. And it's just neat to have these on the wall and see these guys and, make that connection and all with them, and, be able to go through and see how they're doing and things like that. So the Dallas Card Show is a cool show. I mean, you can label it how you want to as far as what they do and all that. I just enjoy going and seeing the different dealers, visiting with them, and seeing if I can pick up a few cards for my pictures and things like that. And also, it's pretty good. But I had to give a shout out to the 110 people that are on my wall so far.
Yeah, that's awesome. I've been to the Dallas Card Show, Papa Jim. It is a great
Okay.
show. Many will tell you it's the next best thing to the
For
national.
the national,
I'm
yeah,
sure there'll be a few people might argue, but it definitely heard that more than one occasion, and so I enjoyed. I've went to, I think, two. I've been to the Dallas Card
okay,
Show twice. I've enjoyed my time there, the city itself, but the
yeah.
show obviously.
Well, let me know when you come back, and we'll definitely get a picture and get you up on and get it signed.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. I just, I'm looking forward to meeting you rather than the other way around, and shake your
Thank
hand and say good on you, because I think everything you're doing, everyone has great ideas or a plan, right? And then when it comes to doing it or executing it, it's a whole nother story. But you've done it and are doing it. You're not done. You're still in the process, and I think that speaks volumes about you. And I think you're honoring, if I may be so bold, I think you're honoring your dad's memory in the process. And I think what father wouldn't be touched by that, to know that their son is doing this. Didn't have to, right? You can enjoy life without doing it, but yet here you are. And I think that's a testament to not only your dad, but you as well. And I think that's why you're here. That's why I wanted to talk to you. While I knew a good chunk of that, I think it's important to get that message out, right? You can't pick your family. Some people probably wish they could, but you know, but I think most of us are happy with our family, and try to do things to make them proud. And I think you're making your dad proud. And I think this is a story that not only needs to be told on podcast, but I think this is a future book for you as well.
Well, I appreciate that, John. And like I said, I'm honored that, between you, like I said, this is only my second podcast about talking about this. So, I mean, I'm honored that the hobby community is even, interested and wants to know about this. I really am. Thank you, John. I appreciate it. Really do.
Well, thank you for sharing. I know it's also not easy sometimes too, as you know right now. So, give out where people can find out what you're doing, kind of see the timeline along the way of how you've gotten to this point.
They can find me on Instagram at Papa Jim Journey. I started this out actually when I was doing traveling. And so the first little bit, if you scroll all the way back, the first little bit of it's going to be me and my camper and doing some traveling and all that. And end up marrying my high school sweetheart, boss wife, and all, and settle down, and then getting into the scrapbooks and the baseball, and here we go, and all with it. So you can find me there. Like I said, as I have time and come across things, I will post on there. It's not going to be an everyday post. Some things I'll have some of my personal stuff, some of my travel on it, and all that, just a variety and everything. I am trying to probably make a couple extra card shows this next year, and all that are close to me within the area and all that, just to go and support them. There's a lot to running them, and unless I'm blessed to be able to live this close and go to the Dallas card show as often as I can. I'm realizing that, and all with all the shows. So just try and go and support some of the other ones.
Well, awesome. I hope to run into you at some point, whether it's Dallas or somewhere else. Keep up the great work, and I'll put in the show notes for those that didn't hear it, where they can find out and see all the work you've done, and some of the show stuff and all that fun stuff. Thanks again, Papa Jim.
Man, I appreciate you, John, and just I'm honored to be on here and to be able to share. And also, thank you very much.
Thank you as well. I think there's a lot to be learned. I love, I just love doing episodes where it's more than just the cardboard. There's life lessons in there as well, and I think this epitomizes that.
Thank you.